What's up, guys? I hope you're doing well. I'm really excited for today's video. It's gonna be really fun. I grew up in Houston, Texas. West Houston to be exact, in an area called Katy. Houston is the fourth largest city in the United States, behind New York City, LA, and Chicago. I loved growing up here, but I hadn't lived in Houston since I was 18 years old, so it's been 12 years. But these past few months have given me the opportunity to rediscover Houston and to explore this amazing city, and it led me to research the history of Houston. How did Houston become what it is today? The first settlement in the area was actually built in 1826 and was called Harrisburg, but it was destroyed by the Mexican army in April of 1836, and not long after, in August of 1836, that same year, Texas gained its independence from Mexico, and two brothers from New York, Augustus and John Allen, bought a plot of land in what is today downtown Houston, and they set out to build the city that would be known as the Great Interior Commercial Emporium of Texas. It's a long name, but it's good. Okay, so in case you didn't know, Texas was a country way back in the day for about 10 years, and the Allen brothers decided to name their new town Houston in honor of the first elected president of Texas, Sam Houston. Obviously, it's a very different time in history, but can you imagine nowadays saying, I'm gonna go buy a plot of land and I'm gonna build a new city? It'd be very interesting. A couple months after the Allen brothers had laid the foundation for their new town, they convinced the newly formed government of the Republic of Texas to make Houston the capital city. But Houston's capital status would only last a couple of years when Mirabeau Bonaparte Lamar succeeded Sam Houston to become the second president of Texas. He moved the capital to the small town of Waterloo, which is now modern-day Austin, Texas. Let's get back to the Allen brothers though, because they are an important part of this story. So they were smart. I mean, they convinced this new government to make their new small town the capital city. And even though it only lasted for a couple of years, they provided a Capitol building. They were charging rent to the government officials, about $75 a month, which nowadays is about $2,000. So they were businessmen, they were making money, but most importantly, they were marketing their new town, and it was slowly becoming what the Allen brothers had dreamed about, the great commercial emporium of Texas. The first industrial revolution had been developing overseas in Great Britain in the early 1800s, and it quickly began to impact the United States. In 1844, the first steamboat would make its way up the Buffalo Bayou, which were very humble beginnings for what is nowadays one of the largest ports in the United States. And in 1853, the first railroad arrived in Houston. The American Civil War was around the corner, and Texas, being a southern state, fought against the Union. But after the Union's victory, Houston continued to develop as a commercial city, and the port of Houston would become Texas' leading port after Galveston was severely impacted by a hurricane known as the Great Storm of 1900. So due to this great storm in Galveston, the port of Houston begins to really prosper. And then a major event occurred on January 10th, 1901. An enormous geyser of oil exploded in an oil field called Spindletop in Beaumont, Texas, which is about 84 miles from Houston. And it was massive, and it was producing about 100,000 barrels of oil per day. And this was the spark that led the United States into the oil age. Massive companies like Gulf Oil, which is now part of Chevron, Texaco, and Exxon trace back their origins to this event. Houston is the energy capital of the world, and it is a city where the largest oil companies have headquarters, and the city employs close to a third of the nation's jobs in oil and gas extraction. Houston is now regarded by many studies as the most culturally diverse city in the United States, and a big reason is that oil, gas, and energy has brought thousands, if not millions, of people from all corners of the earth to Houston. Houston is also home to the world's largest medical center. The Lyndon B. Johnson Space Center is located here in Houston. There are various different industries with strong economic impact, and Houston is also home to two major airports, George Bush Intercontinental and William P. Hobby Airport, both which are big hubs into Latin America. There are so many facets to Houston, and I could cover so many different events and its history, but that might be a really long video. I just wanted to give you guys a brief overview. But the past definitely shapes the future, and I think it's really important to have that in mind because all of us will in some way impact future generations, and hopefully that's going to be a positive impact. So that is a bit of the history of Houston. I feel really proud to be living here again and to have grown up here. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please make sure to give it a thumbs up. It really helps the channel. This next month, I'll be traveling in Colombia, so I'm really excited to be creating some cool videos down there. Stay tuned for that. And before I go, I just wanted to leave you guys with this last thing I found while researching. Back in the early 1900s, when Houston was growing and it was becoming this great commercial emporium that the Allen brothers were dreaming about, a bystander, a visitor, and I quote, said that Houston looked like Babylon on the bayou. I thought that was great. So anyways, let's go Houston. I'll see you guys soon. Peace.